I've been trying to call. I've been on my own for long enough. Maybe you can show me how to love. Maybe I'm going through withdrawals. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby. I look around and since it's cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm running out of time, 'cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road in overdrive, baby. Hit the road in overdrive. The city's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm coming back to let you know I can never say it on the phone. But whenever I let it go, this time I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. Feel free to be whoever you wanna be. Feel free to dance, feel free to sing, just feel free. Feels like the world is picking.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Two Tone Talk by God Pod. Right here live with your boy, Brad Steele, here today. Off season. I don't even need these headphones. What am I doing? Off season is in full swing. The Super Bowl has concluded, and now everyone looks to free agency, which is going to start back up next month. We look to the draft, which is in 2 months, and I will be going live for the draft this year, by the way. I will be right here watching the draft, so make your plans to come hang out with Two Tone Talk on draft night. But off season has begun, and with that, there's a lot ahead for the Tennessee Titans. Money to spend, picks to make. But before we get to that, I wanted to show you guys this. This is how you know. This is how you know this Titans fandom for me goes back a ways. Found this cleaning out our storage unit the other day. For those of you who are listening on Spotify or wherever, you have to take my word for it. But found these. This is from a game. The first Titans game I ever attended was in the year 2000. 24 years ago, Titans played the Cincinnati Bengals and beat them 35-3. This was back when Nissan Stadium was known as Adelphia Coliseum. And I came home with these. I don't know how well you can see that, but all of these different player cards. We got Blaine Bishop. We got Kenny Holmes. We got Steve Air McNair, God rest his soul. We got Frank Wycheck, God rest his soul. Al Del Greco, the kicker. Javon Curse, the freak. Lorenzo Neal, most notable for fielding the kickoff that ended up being the Music City Miracle. Bruce Matthews, all-time great Titan. Eddie George, come on now. Derrick Mason, yes sir. Eddie Robinson, Samari Roll, Randall Godfrey, Jeff Fisher, and the mascot T-Rack. I mean, that's like, look at that right there. That is just, how has that just sat in my storage unit for all these years? I'm gonna have to do something with those. Like hang them in the background or something. I have to figure it out. Anyway, free agency begins next month. A lot of questions about wide receiver, corner, offensive line. A lot of questions about, there better be questions about the defense. I'm telling you, I talked about it Monday. We're all excited about Brian Callahan, offensive-minded coach. That's great. We hired a special teams coach today. We're all excited about the shift in mentality and all of that, but you better not sleep on putting together a good defense. We got Denard Wilson in here. I'm thrilled about that. I watched the press conference with Nick Holtz and Denard Wilson being introduced the other day. Loved what I heard. There are some moves that need to be made on defense as well as offense. And, of course, the draft can be used to do some of that as well. But as I look ahead to free agency, first of all, let's talk about players that the Titans are faced with a decision about. 4 players in particular that I believe they're kind of pressed on making a decision about. I just saw today there are 4 players in particular that the Titans have got to, they've got until I believe Monday to decide whether they're going to let him hit free agency or not. The first one on the list is Ryan Tannehill. I think we already know how that's going to go. I actually think Ryan Tannehill probably is going to end up in Pittsburgh as a backup quarterback. Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator for the Steelers, that makes sense. And Tannehill, I mean, the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh is up in the air. I mean, Kenny Pickett hasn't exactly been a stud. There are rumors that the Steelers could go in a new direction in terms of starting quarterback. Either way, I think Ryan Tannehill would be a solid backup for Pittsburgh. And like I said, with Arthur Smith, it makes sense. Either way, we all know Ryan Tannehill will not be back in Nashville. The second player on the list is Sean Murphy-Bunting. And this is one that I think could go either way. Sean Murphy-Bunting absolutely was the best outside corner on the team this year, but that's not saying too much. Sean Murphy-Bunting, I mean, it's one of those things where if they decide to bring him back, that'll be fine. I'm not going to stick my nose up at it. If they decide to let him walk and go play somewhere else, I'm not going to be like, man, he made some nice plays. But you can understand that one going either way. The next player they got to make a decision on is Azeez Al-Shire, inside linebacker, who probably probably did more good than bad this offseason. And I think if given a choice between Sean Murphy-Bunting and Azeez Al-Shire, I would probably vote to bring back Azeez Al-Shire. Like I said, I feel like he probably did more good than bad. I feel like the secondary, with the exception of Roger McCreary and Amani Hooker and I guess Elijah Molden, they need the slate wiped clean. I feel like Christian Fulton's out of there. And there are, with free agency, maybe middle of the draft type picks, there are some moves that can be made at corner to fix that. Inside linebacker is one of those things you never know. And Azeez Al-Shire, I think, played well enough that I would be fine if they decided to bring him back. I would be fine with that. The last player that they have to make a decision on is Derrick Henry. Derrick. A lot of discussion going on still about what the Titans should do with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is 30 years old, and I'm 30 years old. But in terms of in NFL running back years, 30 years old is usually when people start to say, okay, not that he's done, but he's been doing this for a few years now. He is set to hit free agency. And first of all, the Titans Twitter account put out a 15-minute video yesterday of Derrick Henry highlights. And it left everybody saying, oh, does this mean they're going to bring him back? Does this mean, are they paying tribute to him, or are they talking about bringing him back? I don't know, but I will say this. I'm not going to base anything on what's going on the Titans Twitter account. Okay, I don't think what the social media team is doing has any bearing on whether or not Derrick Henry's going to be back. I think that after the last game of the season, after the Jacksonville game, I was fully convinced that Derrick Henry was gone. Just the way it all went. He played a great game, scored a touchdown, had a big run, got on the mic afterwards and thanked everybody, made a great speech, stayed afterwards and signed autographs. And when I saw that, I thought, well, he's gone. But now, with the way things have gone, with I didn't foresee Mike Vrabel getting fired. I didn't think it would actually happen. I did not foresee Brian Callahan being brought in as the new head coach. I did not see this whole shift in mentality that we've seen from the Titans so far this offseason. I wasn't expecting that. And so, does that change my perspective on Derrick Henry and the possibility of him coming back? A little. I think it raises the chances a little. I'm going by what I heard Brian Callahan say when he said, you'd be nuts not to want Derrick Henry on your team, is essentially what he said. And some of that may be coach speak. Like, some of that may be I'm the new guy in town and I want to say what the fans want to hear. Who knows? But, and I also go by what Derrick Henry said on Bussin' with the Boys when he said, I want to win a Super Bowl. And if Derrick Henry wants to win a Super Bowl, and I hate to even speak this into existence, what happens if the Kansas City Chiefs come calling? What happens if the Kansas City Chiefs call and say, hey man, if you want to win a Super Bowl, I don't even want to think about it. But if winning a Super Bowl is what he wants, what happens if Philadelphia Eagles come calling? What happens if the Dallas Cowboys or the Buffalo Bills? What happens if they come calling? And now, these are teams that are usually right there on the precipice of being in that Super Bowl hunt. How tempting is that? I don't know. It depends what's more important to them. Money or winning a Super Bowl. Now, if money is the main thing he wants, I don't think Tennessee's going to be a fit either, because Tennessee's got to spend their money wisely. And they've got a lot of holes to fill. Wide receiver, offensive line, corner, safety. They've got a lot of different holes to fill. And I don't know how smart it would be to throw money at Derrick Henry. And I love Derrick. He's one of my favorite Titans ever. But it does feel as though we're ushering in a new era. The only players left on the team that are from the old era are Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry. I mean, that's about it. You know what I'm saying? And so, Amani Hooker, I guess. But it's very few players that are left on this team from the old era. We're ushering in a new era, and it just feels like now would be the time to go in another direction. What I will say also is this. If Mike Vrabel had stayed as the coach, I would absolutely say, hey, we need to let Derrick Henry go. We need to learn how, under Mike Vrabel, we need to learn how to win without giving the ball to one guy 30 times a game. We all watched this season, especially in that first game against Houston, when we just continued to run him up the middle when they were stopping at 5 yards in the backfield, and we just kept doing it. And we just kept doing it. And we just kept doing it. When I watched that game, I was like, we got to go in another direction. We got to get Derrick Henry off this team. And it's not a problem with him. It's their Vrabel and company, they're too reliant on him. I would be interested to see how Derrick Henry would fit into a Brian Callahan offense. I really would. I would be interested to see how, what would it be like if Derrick Henry were not just the only thing that we had to offer? What would that be like? That does interest me. My gut feeling is that Derrick Henry's days as a Tennessee Titan are over. I believe that we're going in a new direction, and unless there's just unbelievable interest from him in staying, and he's willing to stay for a good price, I don't think he'll be back. My gut feeling, especially since you've got Tyjae Spears, who has looked really good, and he's primed to kind of take the reins, or the kingdom, if you will. I just think, to me, that's the way to go. And let's spend money on a new offensive line, wide receivers, some corners, some more pass rushers, whatever the case may be. I think that's the likely way to go. I do want to briefly talk about something that I heard the Titans' new defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, say the other day. And man, this just posted about it on the Two-Tone Twitter, which go follow me if you haven't, at @2tone_podcast. Denard Wilson said, hey, it's actually one of the first things he said. He said, it's about the players, not the scheme. It's about the players. We're going to put the players in a position to succeed. We are going to adapt the scheme to fit the players and what they're good at. And he's echoing something that Brian Callahan had already said in his introductory press conference. And I just noted on Twitter, wow, it really is a new day in Nashville, because that is very different from what we have heard for the last 5 years or so from Mike Vrabel. And somebody came at me on Twitter and they said, this is literally the same stuff that Vrabel used to say. Vrabel used to always talk about how it's about the players. And I had to kindly correct that person. Because here's the difference. Vrabel, yes, he used to stand up there and say, the players have to execute better. That's what Vrabel used to say. They would go out and they would lose or something, and then he would say, we've got to execute better. Got to play better, got to coach better. The famous saying that everybody knows. That's what Vrabel used to say after every level. Well, the players have got to execute better. Okay, fine. Great. That's not the same thing as what Brian Callahan and Denard Wilson are saying, though. They're saying we're not going to force our players to fit into a certain scheme. We're not going to ask our players to change what they do and the way they play to try to fit into our scheme. We're going to adapt our scheme to fit our players. That's what's different than Vrabel. Vrabel was saying a completely different thing. Vrabel was saying the players have to play better. Okay, great. What was really happening in real life was, and this is just the reports that we've seen from people close to the situation in the days since Vrabel was fired. Vrabel had a scheme. He had a way of doing things, and he believed that he could fit any player in there and sub in any player and get the same production because his scheme was what was going to take him to the top, and it doesn't matter who you put in there. And when you look at the substitutions and lineup things that they did over the years, that makes sense. Because there were times when A.J. Brown would be standing on the sideline while Nick Westbrook-Akine's in the game on 3rd and 5. There would be times when, certain players would be out on key downs and then guys who are lower on the depth chart are in the game. Remember Nick Hollister? Hello? So I think that holds up, that there was a scheme that they thought you put anybody in there and it'll work. And obviously, look at what it got us. 2 horrible seasons in a row. So I think what Brian Callahan and Denard Wilson are saying is, no, we're not going to force players to fit into certain puzzle pieces. We are going to look at each player. We're going to bring in players, look at what they're good at, and then adapt the scheme to them. Can we all not agree that's a better way to view it than to say, hey, we understand you're good at doing it this way, but you've got to change it so that you can fit into our scheme? Screw that. Free agency. Talk about wide receivers. Everybody likes talking about wide receivers. Obviously, we assume that DeAndre Hopkins will be back in Nashville at the wide receiver position. I think that I would consider Traylon to still be a question mark. It's been kind of a disappointing run so far for him and the Titans, especially this year. This year was a step back from his rookie year. And I don't know. I mean, is it possible that they could try to see what they could get in trade value for Traylon Burks? Maybe. So I'm not sure on him. And in which case the Titans, I mean, Chris Moore is set to be a free agent. I wouldn't mind bringing Chris Moore back and putting him toward, the middle to bottom of the depth chart. But you just feel like the Titans are going to have to get, preferably, a wide receiver with one of their first 2 draft picks, and you'd like to see him get a free agent, a new free agent to bring in. And I've got a list of free agent wide receivers here. Obviously, we'll talk about T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins is who everybody wants, and I get that. Everybody's foaming at the mouth to get T. Higgins, especially now that we have Callahan with the ties to the Bengals. I think the Bengals have made it clear they plan to put the franchise tag on T. Higgins, which means if you want T. Higgins, you're probably going to have to trade for him, and I don't even know what you would have to give up. I think the Bengals are going to want to keep T. Higgins at all cost. And so I think the chances of Tennessee or anybody other than Cincinnati, for that matter, getting T. Higgins are not good. And with a lot of these guys, I know Michael Pittman Jr., there was a guy that a lot of people wanted, from Indianapolis. I'd be shocked if he's not back with the Colts. Mike Evans, I'd be shocked if he's not with the Bucks, and even if he weren't back with the Bucks, and some people call me crazy for this, I don't know how I feel about pairing up veteran DeAndre Hopkins with veteran Mike Evans. I feel like you need somebody. Mike Evans is a beast, I know that, and he's probably going to be back in Tampa Bay anyway, but I just feel like there's a better option out there for Tennessee. McCole Hardman, there's a name for you. He just caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl the other night. Josh Reynolds is listed as a free agent. I mean, prodigal son come home. Calvin Ridley is an interesting one. Calvin Ridley, who I would say didn't have quite the year in Jacksonville that people thought he would. I mean, I think people thought he was going to go off in Jacksonville this year, and he was okay, but he didn't exactly light the world on fire. and I just don't know how much money he would want. I'm not opposed to Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley's a talented guy, obviously, but I don't know if I just don't know what his asking price is, and he did have a disappointing, semi disappointing year. Hollywood Brown, you know, I saw Tyler Rowland with the Locked On Titans pod. He is in favor of getting Hollywood Brown. I mean, wouldn't be my first choice. But the Titans have lacked in speed over the last couple of years, and Hollywood Brown would be, a step up in terms of speed. So would McCole Hardman, by the way. I mean, I know McCole Hardman's only 25 years old, and like I said, he did just catch the game winner in the Super Bowl. I think it was his only catch of the game, but he did catch the game winner the other night. Looking at the rest, I mean, like I said, Chris Moore and Nick Westbrook-Ikine, hey, they're both free agents. I wouldn't mind getting Chris Moore back to put toward the bottom of the depth chart. I mean, there's not really any other names that just totally jump off the screen at you. You've got a guy like Tyler Boyd. A lot of people talking about Jawan Jennings, who has kind of been wide receiver 3 for San Francisco behind Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, people have talked about trading for him. Rand Carthon, obviously with the 49ers ties. I would be surprised if the 49ers are not trying to bring everybody back to try to avenge what just happened to them the other night. But, I mean, Jawan Jennings, I thought, if the 49ers had won the other night, I think you could have made a case for him being the freaking MVP for San Francisco. And so he's set to be a free agent, and that's a name that's intriguing. Former Tennessee Volunteer, so the Vols fans would love it. Brandon Ayuk I would love to get, but you'd have to trade for him. And again, no telling how much you'd have to give up to get him, right? So, some people are going to, realistically, I mean, Odell Beckham's there. I wouldn't bother with that. Curtis Samuel, I mean, names like that, Kendrick Bourne, DJ Chark, Jamal Agnew. I mean, you've got names like that, names that could come in and be productive for you, but not like they're going to be above Hopkins on the wide receiver depth. You're still going to need to draft somebody unless you're able to really hit a home run. And a home run I would consider to be if you could somehow get T. Higgins in a trade, which I don't foresee. If you could somehow get Brandon Ayuk in a trade, which I don't foresee, but I've been wrong before. Jawan Jennings, I wouldn't mind. Hollywood Brown would be fine. It's just like B. Ravens once said, he's hot and cold, But other than that, I mean, these are the kind of guys that you've got, or the McCole Hardmans of the world, Nelson Aguilar, Randall Cobb, who's 33 years old. These are the kind of guys that are there. And like I said, Michael Pittman Jr., I would love to get Michael Pittman Jr., but I just would be shocked if Indianapolis doesn't bring him back. Anthony Richardson, I mean, that's their number one receiver. You want to put Anthony Richardson in a spot to succeed. And then, like I said, Calvin Ridley, that could work too. Offensive line-wise, it also feels like the Titans need to figure something out there as well. Obviously, Aaron Brewer is a free agent, and I don't really care to bring him back anyway. You have certain guys that are just question marks for me. The thing is, it's easy to look at the Titans' offensive line from last year and say, well, I just want to replace everybody except for Skoronski because he was a rookie. I just want 4 new linemen in Skoronski. I don't know if that's realistic. Like, to rebuild the whole offensive line after they just did it last year. Now, they just did it last year with a bunch of Dollar General free agents, but, like, I still think they're going to have to try to start somebody who's already on the roster. Dylan Radins comes to mind as a right guard. I don't think he's a tackle at all. You could try Dylan Radins at a right guard, lest we forget that is a second-round pick from 2021, And this team should be desperate to have some of these draft picks actually work out. So Dylan Radins at right guard would not surprise me at all. Daniel Brunskill, some people have suggested moving him to center. They ever even played center? I don't know. The tackles are what I'm looking at. And Nicholas Petit-Frere started for the Titans all last year. Obviously, this year was a disaster with the gambling suspension, and then he got hurt. He's just a big question mark to me. I am just not a big believer in Nicholas Petit-Frere. But he did start at right tackle. If Vrabel were still the coach, I would absolutely believe that they were going to try to stick Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle. Brian Callahan, I don't know. I mean, he did, like I said, in PF, he started all of 2022. So I mean, maybe they'll give him a shot. But left tackle, everybody's talking about Joe Alt. If you don't get Joe Alt at pick 7 in the draft, I mean, I don't know. I just think you have to sign a tackle to come in and compete. Jonah Williams is a name that's been thrown out there. Trenton Brown is a name that's been thrown out there. I'm not crazy about that one. Our friend Kendall Lamb, he's a possibility. Those are right tackles. Left tackles, I mean, Tyron Smith, I don't think that's even no, it's not happening. So, I mean, but you've got to B Ravens 1. Don't even speak that into existence. B Ravens 1 said Jalen Duncan or Dillard might be the right tackle. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will not accept it. First of all, Andre Dillard's not going to be on this team. Andre Dillard is not going to be on this team. Jalen Duncan will be on the team because, I mean, he's got size. He'll be maybe a rotational guy that can come in, but I would be surprised. I could see them bringing back Chris Hubbard and sticking him at right tackle before I could see them putting Duncan or Dillard over there. But I do think, what worries me, I don't want to do what we did with Andre Dillard last offseason, which is, throw a bunch of money in hopes that it'll work out, and then it doesn't, and then you're screwed all year. I mean, you've got to lock down this left tackle position, and that's why I still believe that Joe Alt is the answer at left tackle. If he's there at pick 7, I think you just have to take him, because that left tackle position, you have got to lock that down. You have got to lock it down. You cannot continue to throw Dennis Daly's and Andre Dillard's and Jalen Duncan's over there and expect anything good to happen. You've got to lock down the left tackle position, preferably for years to come. And are there other tackles that could emerge? I mean, listen, worst case, if Joe Alt is gone by the time the Titans pick at 7 and they have to go another route, are there other guys later on that they could take in the second round that could come in and do it? Maybe, but you've got to figure it out. You've got to figure it out this offseason. Absolutely. Defensively, I know everybody wants L'Jarius Sneed at corner. Me too. But Kansas City's bringing him back. I'm telling you, just like T. Higgins with Cincinnati, just like Michael Pittman with Indianapolis, I would be shocked if the Chiefs don't bring back L'Jarius Sneed. Just absolutely shocked. But a name that intrigues me is Jeff Okudah. He was a top 10 draft pick, maybe even top 5, I think in 2020 to the Lions, and things didn't work out there, but he was with Atlanta a little bit this year and actually did okay with them. Well, if Wesley Barnes is still in the chat, he'll hopefully back me up on that. B Ravens once said Jeff Okudah was a top 3 pick. But I mean, the thing that appeals to me about Okudah is that in Atlanta this year when he went there, I'm not going to say it was like, it was the best corner I've ever seen, but he played well with Atlanta when he went there this year. And, he was a top 5 pick just a few years ago. He's only 25 years old. So, I mean, how many times have we seen at different positions a player that people just give up on as a bust? He's only 25 years old. I mean, there's still time for this guy to revive his career. So I wouldn't mind giving Jeff Okudah a shot. Some other guys, I mean, Awuzie from Cincinnati. That one's a realistic possibility. There's Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy Bunning's only 26 years old. I would have thought he was a little bit older than that. I think the problem is, I mean, so Tennessee, Logan Ryan, he's going to be a free agent. Of course he is. There are a lot of corners out there. I mean, there are a crap ton. Just to let you know, like, I just looked up tackles and wide receivers, and the list went to a certain point. But this page of corners just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And, of course, a lot of these guys, they're going to end up back with the team that they were already with. But Adoree Jackson, hey, Adoree Jackson, there's another, Mike Vrabel special. Adoree Jackson, who was let go by Tennessee, went to the Giants, and I'm not going to say, like, he's Darrelle Revis, but, Adoree Jackson has not played bad with the Giants. There's your free agent. I mean, another prodigal son that could be brought home, but the Titans are going to have to get a corner. I mean, they've got to stock up on corners. I know everybody's going to look at offense for Tennessee, and rightfully so. The offense has been abysmal for 2 years. You're going to look at offensive line. You're going to look at wide receivers. You're going to, at running back, what do you do at running back, assuming Derrick's not coming back? There's got to be somebody else to come in when Tajay's out, right? So that's an interesting perspective too. Do you try to draft a running back in the later rounds to kind of come in and trade off snaps with Spears? Or, and I'm also interested in backup quarterback, by the way. I'm not going to let this go. I'm interested to see what the Titans are going to do about backup quarterback for multiple reasons. Number one, because as I've said before, it's never been more important to have a good backup quarterback. Because, I mean, we've seen it with like half the teams in the NFL. They've got a stretch where they've got to rely on a backup quarterback to come in and play well. So I would like to have a good backup quarterback, and I don't know how comfortable I feel with Malik Willis as a backup. I would love, because Will Levis is young, because it's only going to be his second year, I would love to have a veteran, just at least somewhat reliable backup quarterback. Somebody, Titans South mentioned Sam Darnold. Yeah, I mean, somebody that's just been in the league that not only if we need to rely on them to come in and play for a couple of games that we can have a chance to win, but also, an older veteran who can come in and help Will Levis. I mean, I think that you've heard over the years, there's always these young quarterbacks who talk about how when they have a backup quarterback who's in the quarterback room with them, who is a veteran, who's been around, it really is a great help in their development. So as I look at backup quarterbacks, I think Trubisky's going to be a backup somewhere. I'm just going to read off some of these names. Tyrod Taylor, he's been in the league forever. Marcus, do we dare bring in the flying Hawaiian? Sam Darnold's already been mentioned. Drew Lock, who had to come in for Seattle in a pinch situation. That's a perfect example. Monday Night Football at home against Philadelphia this year, and Drew Lock did the job. Baker Mayfield, he'll probably be starting somewhere. Gardner Minshew, I think will probably be starting somewhere, but that would be a great backup quarterback. Joe Flacco's probably going home. Teddy Bridgewater, I would like to have a more reliable, health-wise backup. Josh Dobbs, Astro Dobbs. I mean, I wouldn't mind Josh Dobbs as a backup. I would not mind Dobbs as a backup quarterback. Nate Sudfeld, Blaine Gabbert. Let Daddy sling it. Carson Wentz, Kyle Allen, AJ by God McCarron. There's a name I bet you hadn't heard in a while. Jake Browning. I mean, Jake Browning's a free agent. And could that be an actual possibility because of the ties to Brian Callahan? I mean, Jake Browning had to play like half the season with Cincinnati and did well. So there you go. I am interested to see, do we just stick with Malik or do we try to bring in a veteran presence into that quarterback room? I would like to see that. Looking at the draft, because I will say I'm going to be taking some time off from the pod after today, probably the rest of February off, a little bit into March, just because this podcast has taken up a lot of my life during football season. So I'm going to take a little bit of time off and then come back next month ready to hit free agency and the draft even harder because I'm assuming stuff will start happening. So I will be taking a couple of weeks off from the podcast after today. So I want to briefly talk about the draft and looking at how things are stacking up right now. We got a long way to go. We got 2 months till the draft, and things are going to change. I mean, it always does. There are going to be guys who are not being talked about right now who will end up being talked about. There are guys that are being, touted as going top 10 who are going to fall. I have to believe, I still believe right now the top 3 picks will be quarterbacks. Although I am very skeptical about Drake May. I absolutely think that Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels will go. Drake May, I'm just sensing some skepticism about him. And that worries me because if Drake May does not go to New England at 3, let's say Williams goes to Chicago and then Jaden Daniels goes to Washington, what worries me about New England, what if they take Marvin Harrison at 3? Okay, then Arizona gets up and they take Malik Neighbors. Then the Giants and Chargers, I mean, the odds grow of one of them taking Joe Alt. And maybe the other one takes Brock Bowers, and then you still got Odunze, the wide receiver that everybody's wanting too. So to me, there are 3 stud wide receivers that are probably going top 10. And there's at this point 3 quarterbacks. Joe Alt. I think Brock Bowers is probably still a top 10 pick. I still want Joe Alt. I think it's not, of course, I'm not going to be disappointed if we ended up with a guy like Malik Neighbors or a wide receiver or something like that. And lest we forget, I mean, Brian Callahan was in Cincinnati when they needed offensive line help and they still decided to take Jamar Chase. So I'm not eliminating the possibility that Tennessee could go wide receiver even though they know they need offensive line help. I don't know how you don't take Joe Alt right now. If he's there at 7, I don't know how you don't take him. You've got to lock down this left tackle position. It's just been a disaster. It has hindered this entire offense for 2 years. It hadn't been the only thing, but it's been one of the top 2 or 3 things that has hindered this offense for the last 2 years is the poor play at left tackle. So I just think that Joe Alt is still top priority for me. If he's gone, then yeah, I'm down with Malik Neighbors. I'm down with Odunze. I'm down with Bowers. Brock Bowers, I could be talked into. I know some people are like, really, we're going to spend the 7th pick of the draft on a tight end. He would pretty much be a wide receiver. But I still, just Joe Alt is where my eyes are still locked on. And if he's not there, I don't know if there's an offensive tackle that's worth taking that high. So you got to talk about the option that the Titans could trade back a little bit. If depending on how things go. In a perfect world, I think the first 3 picks would be quarterbacks. Well, in a perfect world, we would trade up and get Maserati Marv at 4, but I don't think that's happening. I think Arizona takes Marvin at 4. Maybe Giants go Neighbors, Chargers go Bowers, and Titans get Joe Alt. We'll have to see. I mean, we got 2 months, and a lot can change and it probably will. But my eyes are still on Joe Alt. My eyes are still on Joe Alt with that 7th pick. It's just too important at this point to lock down that left tackle position. And that's going to do it for the Two-Tone by God pod today. Like I said, going to be taking a couple weeks off from the pod. We'll be back in a few weeks to get back at it with free agency and draft talk for sure. And don't forget to sub. Don't forget to go on Twitter at Two-Tone_podcast. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. This is Two-Tone by God pod, staying way too high on the wins, way too low on the losses. God bless you, everybody. Tighten up. Bye.